Hello there, and welcome to a new build guide for Age of Wonders 4. Today I got a elemental build, finally, and it's working for the Industrious culture and it's stupidly strong. Of course, play tested on brutal difficulty, and as you can see, on turn 61, I was bored enough to just waltz down one of the AI enemies, and I had no problems at all. We're not utilizing all of the elementals. I opted out of the Ice Elemental branch because you can't have it all. Fire and Ice Elementals play together so badly that I felt like it's either one or the other. The Industrious culture here adds in a lot of robustness into the build, and it is quite massive, sporting the ability to have an army out of flesh and blood and an elemental army at the same time without your empire breaking a sweat about it. Also, your cities grow like stupid, and, well, it's pretty powerful. I thought it will be a meme build, but after all, elementals are much more powerful than I thought. Now, let's get into the meat and bones. First and foremostly, the racial traits are pretty non-relevant. Our army is 90% elementals. I went here for overwhelm tactics because it's always nice to have those crits, and athletics to make sure that our units can reposition themselves quite nicely in combat. A lot of different options that come to mind here. I think also one that allows you to reposition your units in between your racial units is pretty nice too. At the end of the day, you're pretty much only using your supporters out of your racial roster for this build anyways. Now, cultural traits. Here we go for the ever-prevalent mana channelers because when you are playing a summon-heavy build, this is one of the best traits to pick, if not the best trait. The lowered mana costs are just massive, and we make good use of that during the entire game. And Devious Watchers is for me a sleeper OP trait on the Industrious culture, because you can take a lot of kickstart power out of all these mountain ranges. Having a second scout at the beginning of the game is just a power play trick that allows you to power play around these mountains way more. That's why I picked it up. Feel free to pick up something else if you want to. I love to have a shadow trait just for that extra shadow affinity, allowing me to go into knowledge extraction, which is just a massive trait. In every game I'd like to have that. Okay, heading on over to the tomes. Here, things were extremely complicated. So I'm starting out on this build with the Tome of Pyromancy. You could also start out with the Tome of Rock, but I opted into Pyromancy because it gives you more ranged options. You have Magma Spirits available, which will be your ranged attacker backbone for the entire build. Searing Blades is very important for this build too, and don't waste your money in Fiery Arrows. We almost have no archers or any units of these, so we don't need that at all. The Pyromancers are a nice way to sink your money into, as we're going to have quite powerful battle mages at the end of the game. I pretty much like that one. And the Ritual Pyre is very important for your early game. It pays off to have one or two of these because you are very mana hungry with this build, at least at the early stages. Later down the road it's not that much of a big issue. And Ignite and Immolate are just nice damage steroids that help out the Industrious culture's early game a lot. Second tome is the Tome of Rock. Now, the lesser stone spirits will entirely replace our cultural shields. You can mix in a tier 3 cultural shield. They aren't bad, but it's just like the stone spirits are really good. They are already powerful at tier 1, as they can immobilize enemies and are not immobilize. They can slow enemies and get extra damage towards slowed and immobilized enemies. That's a pretty nice synergy in itself. And you also gain the gargoyles, which are really good in this build, as they are among the most robust shock units that you can't get. They pretty much give you the early game smacking power that you need, and it's something nice to spend your gold into when you're out of mana and you still want to expand your army. As you can see, I pretty much skipped on all these spells. Racial transformations are not that important for our build, as most of our roster are elementals. Rock Blast surely is a nice single target nuke, and Stone Skin, well, It is pretty powerful at what it does, but I always have better things to do. Obsidian weaponry is really good with your heroes, and combination of searing with searing weapons, you already get a lot of damage over time together here. Central Quarry, well, you can pretty much skip on that. We are mostly here for the gargoyles and the stone spirits. That point, we pick up Tome of Summoning. It is a real powerhouse of a tome for this build due to several reasons. One of the first and foremost aspects here is Arcane Restoration, allowing you to have a battlefield heal on all of your elementals. That's just powerful. That's just so good to have. Arcane Supercharge allows you to send your tier 1 units into a frenzy, or your tier 3 units as soon as they evolve into a real power mode. Arcane Bond is useful if the enemy has a lot of these units after all. And Astral Keeper is the supporter that you can't just summon, and once he dies, he just pops into Healing Burst. It is extra cheap for us mana-wise due to the mana channelers, and Astral Serpents are really good tier 3 filler units, and I love everything about them. Wisp Familiars, if you have battle magic burst heroes, are absolutely amazing, as they really pack quite a punch, and they soften the enemy's resistance. I like them. And the Summoning Well cranks out much needed mana, so there's nothing bad at that. At that point, we backtrack into another tier 1 tome. The other tier 2 tomes are not that attractive for this build, and the Tome of Evocation has so many tools in the box that we desperately need that it would be foolish to skip this. First and foremostly, lightning focus. All of your fire elementals all of a sudden will ditch out 2 different types of damage over time, and that is just outright crazy powerful. We also gain access to the storm spirits. At tier 1 they aren't much, but the tier 3 type, or the tier 3 version of them is amazing. They are such powerful shock troopers, with the only downside that they die quite easily, but they are a really nice addition into your build. Lightning Blades makes all of your frontliners hit even harder. Nice synergy also with the electrification of your backliners, as it cranks up the damage by 20% at that point. Really good stuff. And with the evokers in your roster, you also have a lot of battle mages that you can just summon out of the book. And Fulmination, well, if you want to research it, it is useful, as is Lightning Torrent. And with lightning weapons at that point, your heroes are really good at melee or physical ranged. You can ditch out so much damage on your heroes with that build. It's pretty nuts. Channeling Tower comes in as another conduit building. We have a lot of conduits here, and it's really good. So tier 3 reached, and that's where we pick up Terramancy. You might wonder why we're picking up Rock and Terramancy, as both yield the same type of unit, but at the point where you reach tier 3, it comes in really handy to be capable of filling up your losses directly with a tier 3 unit, because otherwise you would be filling up probably died tier 3 units with just tier 1 units, and that is never a really good course of action. Besides that, the Tome of Terramancy offers a lot of nifty tools. Seismic Shock is a really powerful battlefield spell. Crushing Earth is practically the chance of killing somebody outright or dealing out a lot of damage. It's a very powerful single target nuke. Earth Shatter is really good. I mean, it's just terraforming battlefield nuke, or a map nuke, and Tremor Ritual is a sick siege project. 6 fortification damage is a lot. It's really a lot. And Leaden Blows, well, that's really nice to have for your heroes as well. Like I said, your heroes can ditch out a lot of damage on that build too. And the other tier 3 tome to pick up here is the Tome of Amplification. Since we have a lot of battle mages rolling, Frenzying Focus is just perfect. We can also mix in Astral Blood, which makes your Pyromances and your Evokers go places, and, well, again, Amplified Arrows, you can pretty much skip that. Amplify Minds is pretty nice, we can always use some extra knowledge, and Amplification Pylon and Chain Lightning are just nice, as is Spell Amplification, because we do have a lot of tactical spells. And hey, look at that! more conduits. But the resonance fields are really, really good as they give you more capabilities of battlefield magic. So, tier 4, I opt into Astral Mirror, not as the first one, maybe as the second one, it's up to you. Mostly because Mirror Veil is just absolutely nuts on your Earth Elementals, turning them into just a really, really crazy freak show of damage reflection. And all the rest of the tome here is also really, really nice to have. And at the other end, I personally love Tome of the Crucible, as it offers you a lot of battlefield magic things that are just really, really nice to have. But I would also say Golden Realm or Severing are very potent choices as well. Either way, make sure you end up on 8 Materium Affinity so you can pick up the Tome of the Creator, so Eternal Earth can be played out to its maximum power fantasy with that build, offering you Undying on all of your elementals. It's pretty nuts if you get there. And yeah, it is just what it is. Tier 5 tomes are pretty powerful, and that's where we end with the tome section. Now, let's get over to the roster. Like I said, your racial roster will not be used too much. Pioneers are very important in the early game, and due to the fact that pretty much the majority of your roster is composed out of elementals, you can invest your starting gold and your starting workforce into extra scouts. This is extremely powerful for the Industrious culture, as it gives you access to even more mountain ranges and even more power play around that. It's, for this particular build, really good, as you will summon most of your units. Forget about Anvil Gods. Obelisks deserve a honorable mention, as they have a really nice hard-hitting attack that is really synergistic with overwhelm tactics. But since we ditch most of our ranged roster, it's what it is. Gargoyles are really cool, as they give you shock units. And like I said, pyromancers, and we don't see them here, the evokers are just where you can sink your money into if you want to, but at the end of the day, elementals are where we want to be. The gargoyle I just want to showcase here is a very nice shock unit that can just heal itself and power up its defenses when it goes into defense mode, and that is really, really powerful, as this is unique to shock units. They usually end up being quite fragile, and like I said, these guys can be, due to inspiring defense and their defensive sweep, quite useful for your roster, as they can provide defense options so your elementals can keep smacking. And the Steel Shaper. Why is the Steel Shaper interesting, you might ask yourself? They provide burst heal. Strength from Steel is transforming bolstered defenses into HP and damage bonuses. This is massive for this build, as we have a lot of opportunity to gain that, since you got the Rune of Industry. As you see here, the bolstering effect, that means you gain these defenses whenever you get hit, get applied to all of your elementals. In a nutshell, Steel Shapers allow you to burst heal your elementals in a pinch, and if you don't need a burst heal, you can crank up their damage immensely. And Grand Defense is also just doing the same thing. You can create 2 stacks of that, free action, and then strength from steel afterwards. So even if they didn't get a smack in the face yet, you can pump their damage up by 20% and heal your unit for 16. All in all, it is really useful to have these guys, and I personally like to replace them with other supporters if I get the option, but don't underestimate them. Have 1 or 2 in your 8, or I would say you should have 2 of 18 units Steel Shapers, or 3 if you can't get your hands on another supporter. These guys offer, after all, a zone of magical resistance, which can be extremely important. Therefore, you can't skip them. And on this mechanism here is much better than it looks, because your stone elementals are already stupidly resilient, and they become even more powerful when you add that in too. So The tier 3 units you have here are stone spirits, which can hop into the enemy and do a immobilization flash, which is really cool as this spell doesn't know any friendly fire. This is outright amazing, as you can just hop towards wherever you want to, as the immobilizing phase always leaves up enough action points to quake afterwards. These guys are really powerful. I really was surprised how good they are. And the magma spirits are your backline nukers. They have a 1 hex radius nuke. They have firebolts that incinerate and electrify at some point, and they also end up being Fury Wake units, which can be a little bit unfortunate, so you always have to maneuver around that. That is a little bit nasty. But apart from that, they are everything you need, and they are also quite slippery units, as they can just teleport away if they ever get struck on a point where you don't want to have them. The storm elementals are shock troopers that transform into phasing counterparts. I sadly don't have one available right now. Their biggest sales points are they are really hard to hit by ranged attacks, and at the point where they transform into storm spirits, the shocking phase creates a field of electrification, and it is nuts how powerful that can be. They're extremely good at diving into the enemy's backline, and yeah, they really excel at what they do. These are your 3 main elemental types that you will be working with, and they are also the main part of your army. Your heroes. You want to get your hands on, again, summoning and supporting skills, as your supporting abilities on your native roster are rather limited. Therefore, I always opt into restore, because that's just a really nifty thing to have, and more of these passive ability bonuses, everything I can get from endurance training over defensive training over strength training, since there's sadly not way to boost your elementals yet in a unit enchantment way or anything. I had to get every little bit of performance out of that, but it works surprisingly well, and at the end of the road, the spur to action is waiting as a reward. After that, you can decide now if you want to create a warfare hero that dishes out tremendous amounts of damage with lightning, obsidian, and searing weapons, or you go into battle magic and get yourself that wisp familiar into Weaver eventually to get extra summons out on the table. The other thing that I want to mention here, which is extremely useful on this build, is to have that's the wrong one, is to have one hero that sports a resurrection spell command game. It's of course the last stack you pick. It's always the last stack you pick. Here, this spell. Restoration can come in super handy if you don't want to lose that certain elemental in your army, because you foster these guys. So, now we move on over to the strategy pod. The very first thing that I want to point out here is that experienced leader is an insanely important part of your strategy. I personally went down the road like this. Once I had enough heroes for my battlefield, I moved one of my heroes away from the front lines. As soon as she had experienced leader, I separated her and put an entire fostering army of elementals here, and now she's going to receive the next unit here, and we're basically breeding here tier 3 units, and I strongly recommend to do this as much as you can. Every hero with the experienced leader trait should have a banner of tier 1 elementals beneath him to train them silently up. So, expansion-wise, you go for the usual approach. You found cities, and then you summon as many units as you can. As soon as you have 6 elementals plus, you can go and conquer the creature nodes. Try to get yourself your hands on heroes as quick as possible. They are really, really important for your strategy, and due to all the prospecting bonuses, it should be not too much of a big deal to get the outposts put into cities quite quickly. Another really important thing to note, prospecting yields an insane amount of items, so Industrious Culture is extremely good at utilizing the item forge. Don't sleep on that, it's a real powerhouse. The other thing that you can do here or should know about your strategy is your army is consisting out of units that have advantages. Elementals are full of advantages. They are immune against a lot of damage over time effects. This makes them extremely robust. I was surprised how good regeneration strategies work on these, therefore mass rejuvenation is really a thing. And all in all, you should be careful with your development until you got the summoning tome up and running. You are weakest until this point, but after you have developed Arcane Restoration and Astral Keeper, it is really difficult to lose combats anymore because you have a lot of healing capabilities and a lot of damaging potential. Your banners can be quite chaotic. Like I said, the only thing you should focus around is one supporter per banner, and the rest can be composed of elementals to your own liking. Like I said, try to get your hands on foreign supporters. They make this build a lot more powerful. And try to have your main army composed out of elementals as much as possible. Pretty much every unit made out of flesh and blood is supposed to be a spare army. Now, another really big advantage of that build is that exactly this spare army composed out of pyromancers, evokers, bastions, steel shapers, maybe a couple of gargoyles and arbalists is just something you can have on the side extra to your main army. As you can see here, I was really lazy this run. I'm at a plus 330 in terms of gold. I could have another of these doom stacks already waltzing down to the other AI enemy. It is really, really amazing how good your economy is with that build. When it comes down to the Empire skills, it's really important to get yourself Arcane Artisans, as this will help you a lot. You have also access to Impressment. This makes your Tier 1 Elementals a lot cheaper, and at some point down the road, you also gain access to Shadow Binding, lowering the costs even more, allowing you to just spam like crazy when you want to summon things. All in all, your build should be churning out a unit every turn as long as you have an income that looks like that. The wonderful part about all this is you can take your sweet time to boost up your knowledge production and your city's economy and background while you don't need to worry about spending any of your gold for your armies, which makes this build extremely powerful in that regard. So, I don't have much more to say. I hope you enjoyed this one. I see that this build has potential to be played, of course, on the mystical culture. I do see this as a chance on the high culture as well. Don't know how barbarians and the other guys would look like, but high culture and mystic culture sounds to me like something that totally should work here. Yeah, feel free to tell me what you guys think. Leave a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and as usual, check out Patreon, PayPal, and Buy Me a Coffee. They are the topmost links in the description box, and I want to say a big thanks to all of you supporting the channel, and of course a big thanks to all of you watching the videos until after these pesky ads of mine. I deeply appreciate you guys having a good time here, and see you all on the next one. Bye-bye.